The cigarette burned down between Haruto's fingers as the clock flashed 2:13 a.m. in the dark Tokyo apartment. Empty convenience store coffee cans crowded the table beside an overflowing ashtray, and the stale smell of smoke clung to the air like a life he no longer wanted but could not seem to escape. Haruto stared at the final cigarette in the pack. He had promised himself this would be the last one. Again. His fingers trembled slightly as he lit it. The flame illuminated the exhaustion under his eyes. He inhaled deeply, then coughed hard into his sleeve. The coughing had become worse over the past year. At 37 years old, Haruto worked as a salaryman at a logistics company in Shinjuku. Every day felt identical. Wake up tired, commute shoulder to shoulder with strangers, sit under fluorescent lights for 12 hours, smoke during breaks, return home numb. His smoking started at university. At first, it felt social. Then it became stress relief. Eventually, it became automatic. He smoked when he was anxious. He smoked when he was bored. He smoked after meals. He smoked before meetings. He smoked to celebrate. He smoked to escape. By the time he realized cigarettes controlled him, the habit had already woven itself into every corner of his life. And the worst part was not the addiction, it was the shame. Every failed attempt made him hate himself more. Haruto had tried everything: nicotine gum, motivation videos, throwing away entire packs dramatically at midnight. He even wrote, "New life starts today," on sticky notes across his apartment. But 3 days later, sometimes 3 hours later, he always relapsed. One winter morning, Haruto stood outside his office building during a smoke break. Snow drifted slowly through the Tokyo streets while employees gathered in silence around the smoking area. His phone buzzed. It was a message from his younger sister. "Dad asked if you're coming hiking with us this spring." Haruto stared at the message. Their father had recently turned 70. When they were children, his father used to take them hiking through mountain trails outside Nagano. Haruto remembered racing ahead while his father laughed behind him. But now, walking up a single staircase left Haruto breathless. He looked down at the cigarette between his fingers. For the first time, he did not feel pleasure. He felt grief. Not because smoking was killing him, because he realized he had slowly abandoned himself. That night, Haruto walked aimlessly through narrow Tokyo streets until he found himself outside a tiny ramen shop he used to visit years ago. An elderly owner recognized him immediately. "Haruto-san," the old man smiled. "You look tired." Haruto laughed weakly. "Work." The owner nodded slowly. Then he pointed toward the cigarette pack sticking out of Haruto's jacket. "When people suffer," the old man said quietly, "they search for something immediate, but immediate comfort often creates long suffering." Haruto said nothing. The old man continued preparing ramen carefully. "One small step every day. That is how people change." At the time, the words sounded too simple, but they stayed in Haruto's mind. Because deep down, he realized his biggest mistake was believing transformation had to happen dramatically. He thought he needed one perfect moment of discipline, one heroic decision, one magical burst of motivation. But real change rarely works that way. And that brings us to something incredibly important. Most people do not fail to break bad habits because they are weak. They fail because they misunderstand how habits actually work. Addictions are not usually about pleasure alone. They are about emotional escape. People smoke to calm anxiety. People binge social media to avoid loneliness. People overeat to numb stress. People gamble to feel temporary excitement. The habit becomes a coping mechanism. Over time, the brain stops asking, "Is this good for me?" Instead, it asks, "Does this help me survive this moment emotionally?" That is why shame alone never fixes addiction. And this is where several Japanese philosophies become surprisingly powerful. The first is Kaizen. Kaizen means continuous improvement through small, daily changes. Most people approach self-improvement aggressively. They say, I'll quit completely tomorrow. I'll change my entire life this week. I'll become a different person overnight. But the brain resists extreme change, especially when the habit is tied to stress or emotional survival. Kaizen takes the opposite approach. Instead of demanding perfection, it focuses on tiny, sustainable actions. When Haruto discovered this philosophy, he stopped trying to become a non-smoker instantly. Instead, he asked himself a different question. What is the smallest action I can repeat consistently? At first, his goal was almost laughably small: delay his first cigarette by 10 minutes. That was it. Not quitting forever, not becoming perfect, not transforming his identity in one dramatic moment. Just 10 minutes. After a week, he increased it to 20. Then he stopped smoking indoors. Then he replaced one cigarette break with a short walk. Then he started tracking every craving instead of automatically obeying it. Slowly, something important happened. Haruto stopped feeling powerless because every tiny victory rebuilt trust in himself. And that is one of the hidden secrets of Kaizen. Small wins are psychologically powerful. Every repeated action sends a message to your brain about who you are becoming. Most people wait to feel motivated before changing, but motivation usually comes after action, not before it. Tiny, consistent actions create identity, and identity creates momentum. But Kaizen alone is not enough, because if you remove a destructive habit without replacing the emptiness underneath it, the mind searches for another escape. This leads to the second philosophy, Ikigai. Ikigai roughly translates to a reason for living, a reason to wake up, a reason to continue. Many addictions survive because people feel emotionally disconnected from meaning. When life becomes repetitive, lonely, stressful, or empty, quick pleasures become dangerously attractive. Haruto gave small moments of relief during a life that felt emotionally flat. So instead of only asking, "How do I stop smoking?" he began asking a deeper question. What kind of life makes smoking less necessary? That question changed everything. Haruto started reconnecting with forgotten parts of himself. He began hiking again on weekends. At first, he struggled badly. His lungs burned, his legs ached, he had cravings constantly. But each hike reminded him of childhood memories with his father. For the first time in years, he felt emotionally alive. He also rediscovered his old love for sketching city landscapes. Nothing professional, just quiet evenings drawing train stations, alleyways, and rainy streets in small notebooks. These activities did something cigarettes never could. They gave him meaning instead of escape. That distinction matters deeply. Addictions often imitate fulfillment, but imitation is not the same as nourishment. Real fulfillment usually comes from connection, growth, contribution, creativity, and purpose. Ikigai does not mean every day becomes magical. It means your life slowly gains direction, and when people have direction, destructive habits lose part of their emotional power. But even with purpose and gradual progress, there is still one final obstacle: discomfort. Because every person trying to break addiction eventually faces painful urges, cravings, anxiety, restlessness, irritability, loneliness. And this is where the third philosophy matters: Gaman. Gaman is the Japanese idea of enduring hardship with patience and dignity. Not denial, not emotional suppression, endurance. Modern life trains people to escape discomfort immediately. If we feel bored, we scroll. If we feel stressed, we consume. If we feel pain, we distract ourselves. But addiction strengthens every time discomfort automatically controls behavior. Haruto realized this during one particularly difficult night. After a brutal workday, he stood outside a convenience store staring at the cigarette display behind the cashier. His entire body wanted relief. His mind started bargaining instantly. Just one pack. You've had a hard week. You can restart tomorrow." For several minutes, he stood frozen. Then he remembered something he had written in his notebook earlier that week. "A craving is temporary. I do not have to obey every feeling." So instead of running from discomfort, he walked outside and simply sat on a bench. He let the craving exist. His chest felt tight, his thoughts raced, his hands twitched. But after 20 minutes, the urge slowly weakened. That moment changed his understanding completely. He realized cravings are often like waves. They rise, they peak, then they pass. Gaman teaches emotional stamina, the ability to remain steady long enough for the storm to move through you. And honestly, this principle applies far beyond smoking. Most destructive habits are attempts to escape uncomfortable emotions quickly. But every time you survive discomfort without surrendering to the habit, your mind becomes stronger. Not perfectly strong, just stronger than before. Now, this does not mean recovery is linear. Haruto still relapsed occasionally. There were stressful months when he smoked again. There were nights he felt disappointed in himself. But another quiet Japanese idea helped him continue. Progress does not require perfection. You can stumble without abandoning the journey. Eventually, nearly 2 years after beginning his small changes, Haruto climbed a mountain trail with his father during spring. Cherry blossoms moved softly in the wind around them. Halfway up the trail, his father smiled. "You breathe easier now," he said. Haruto laughed. "So do you." For a moment, neither of them spoke, and somewhere in that silence, Haruto realized something important. Breaking addiction was never only about removing cigarettes. It was about rebuilding a relationship with himself. So if you are struggling with bad habits right now, remember this. You do not need to transform overnight. You do not need perfect discipline. You do not need to become fearless before beginning. Start smaller than your ego wants. That is Kaizen. Build a life that gives your mind meaning beyond temporary escape. That is Ikigai. And when cravings or discomfort arrive, remember you are capable of enduring difficult moments without immediately surrendering to them. That is Gaman. Here are 3 simple principles you can begin using today. First, reduce the habit before trying to eliminate it completely. Make the change so small that resistance becomes weaker. Second, identify what emotional need the habit is serving. Stress relief, loneliness, escape, reward? Replace the emotional function, not just the behavior. Third, practice sitting with discomfort for a few extra minutes before reacting. You are training emotional endurance. And finally, remember this. A relapse is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that you are human. The goal is not perfection. The goal is returning to the path again and again until the new direction becomes natural. Tell yourself, I can improve slowly. I can survive temporary discomfort. I do not need instant relief to be okay. My future is built by repeated small actions. One day, the habits that once controlled you may no longer feel like chains, not because you fought yourself with hatred, but because you rebuilt yourself patiently. If this video helped you, make sure to subscribe and share it with someone who might need encouragement today. And remember, small steps are still steps. Fall 7 times, stand 8. See you in the next video.